I am Victoria L. Burson. This is Leadership on the Go. Leadership is not always preparedness for the unknown, but it is tapping into the unknown prepared. Good evening, good evening, good evening, and good evening, and welcome to Essentials Unleashed presents Leadership on the Go. I'm telling you, we're in for a fantastic time tonight. We have two of the most influential, in my opinion, two of the most influential African-American men who are what we call, or what I like to call, game changers. And they are going to share tonight what it means to evolve into greatness as leaders. I'm telling you, it's going down like 4 flat tires, in the words of Dr. Freddie Haynes. I am so thankful that you joined us on this evening. Please like, tag, and share right now. Please like, tag, and share right now on Facebook. We are also on YouTube and LinkedIn. And so we are thanking our audience. If you have questions, please let us know where you are hailing from right now, right? Where are you watching from? Let us know if you're in Mexico, if you're in Nevada, if you're in California. Just let us know where you are watching us from right now. And even when you look at the replay, still let us know in the notes where we like to keep up with that, where you are watching from. All right. So, without further ado, we're going to go ahead and introduce our first guest, Jamye Wooten. All right. And so I'm telling you, this is a bad, bad brother, and he hails right here where we are together in Baltimore, Maryland. Let me read a little bit to you, just a little bit about the brother. Can I do that for you? Okay. Jamye Wooten is a digital communications and social impact strategist and a human rights organizer. On the forefront of digital strategy, his work has spanned the globe, advising nonprofits, faith-based organizations, corporations, and individuals in their efforts to engage their constituencies. In January of 2019, Wooten launched Collectivity, spelled CLLCTIVLY, to create an ecosystem to foster collaboration, increase social impact, and amplify the Black voice-led organizations in greater Baltimore. Collectivity is a place-based social change organization centering Black genius, narrative power, social networks, and resource mobilization. Most recently, in response to COVID, Collectivity launched the Baltimore Black-led Solidarity Fund to support Black-led and Black-owned businesses. I was a recipient of that, providing over $500,000 in no-strings-attached micro grants. Jamye has organized and documented social movements from across the United States and United Kingdom and Africa. He is the former program director of Collective Banking Group, CBG, a Christian ministry that draws together leaders from faith, business, and public service to develop and enhance economic empowerment strategies for the African-American community. Come on through, Jamye, and let the people meet you. This is a blessing. This is awesome. Come on and tell the people a little more about you. I know I've said a little bit about you. Go ahead and share what you want to share right now.
You shared a lot. That was good. Well, thank you so much for the invitation. And I'm Jamye Wooten here in Baltimore, Maryland, the founder of Collectively, also Kinetics, where we do a lot of digital strategy, issue education with faith-based organizations across the country. I'm a dad, the father of 2 beautiful daughters and 2 wonderful sons as well, and happy to be with you.
I am so glad that you're here, and I look forward to this conversation with you tonight. Thank you for being present. Thank you so much. And so our second guest, he's no stranger to Leadership on the Go. He is no stranger. So this is Reverend Wilhorn, and he is going by Wilhorn this evening. Amen. Amen. Wilhorn is the founder and CEO of Wilhorn Ministries and the Wilhorn Community Impact Foundation. He is also the founder and former lead pastor of Cosmopolitan Congregation of Dallas in Dallas, Texas. From his years of study and experience as a same-gender loving Christian, he wrote and published the book called The Handbook. Oh my goodness, I have it, y'all. I should have had it present right here. It's called The Handbook. It's a black book, little black book, but powerful. A quick conversation guide to what the Bible does and does not say about homosexuality. Amen to that work. Will is a gifted, yes, he is, teacher, motivator, humanitarian, spiritual guide. I like to say spiritual coach. He has an uncanny ability to tap into the true purpose of the Holy Spirit, which is effectively communicating with people of different races, nations, and cultures. He has become renowned for challenging the religious, yes, he has, religious status quo and making biblical concepts clear and relevant for people of many different backgrounds and religious traditions. In over 25 years of ministry and business experience, he has traveled to over 25 different countries on 4 continents. That experience has given him the unique ability to see and communicate spiritual truths from many different vantage points. Today, he is completing a Master of Theology studies at Bright Divinity, my alma mater, yes, Christian University, and continuing to blaze a trail across the country with his unique cosmopolitan message. Y'all hear that? Cosmopolitan message. He's going to come on and tell you what that means. Equipping people to enjoy the peace and power that comes with living in authenticity. Living in authenticity. That's great. Will is committed to using his gifts to not only make life better for individuals, but also to bring about ecumenical, cross-cultural, and interfaith unity among the human family. Come on through, Will. Yes. Let the people meet you again here on Leadership on the Go. Why don't you share what you want to share?
Every time I hear someone read that bio, I have to say, who is that guy? Oh my goodness. Listen, I'm so excited to be here again. I absolutely love this forum, and I absolutely love you, my sister.
Thank you.
And I'm just so very excited that we collectively as a body are ready to have conversations that push the envelope, that challenge our traditional mindsets and really set us up for this next place. And so I'm just really excited to be here. Brother Jamie, I'm so excited to meet you, my brother, see what it is that you're doing. And hopefully this conversation tonight is going to help some folks that are watching. So glad to be here.
Absolutely. Glad for both of you. And I don't want to waste any more time. Listen, this is good. This is good. I got 2 game changer, 2 Black or African-American, whichever you choose. But these are some powerful brothers on this platform today that's doing the doggone thing, right? And this whole show, this whole segment is about evolving around our greatness and how we perpetually evolve, right? And answer perpetual calls, and so these brothers have done that, and they're great leaders. They have done masterful works in leadership, and have been honest about what's going on in their world in leadership. So let's get started. All right. So the first question I have for you, if you will, is who are you right now? I know we did the bio thing, and I know you introduced yourself, but who are you right now in the world today, and how did you get here? And, we're going to start with you, Jamie. Who are you, and who are you in the world today? How do you see yourself? How are people seeing you? And how did you get here?
Yeah, on my sort of Facebook, Instagram, social media bios, I put repair the breach and mobilizing resources. So I think that's sort of who I am, what the work of collectively is, and has always been. Even Kinetics, the work has been about sort of closing the gaps and connecting people together. And so right now, what collectively we launched in 2019 to be a resource for those that seek to find, fund, and partner with Black social change organizations in Baltimore. So the backstory behind that was after the murder of Freddie Gray, I co-founded Baltimore United for Change, and that was a coalition of grassroots organizations here. And during that time, we created a skills bank, which was an on-ramp for folks who weren't necessarily on the ground but wanted to plug in, and had over 260 individuals and organizations join our skills bank. So our goal was collectively in 2019 was how could we create a more faith-forward platform, invite all Black-led organizations in the city of Baltimore. So we launched with our asset map directory, mapped over 200 Black-led organizations based on their area of focus and neighborhood. And we also have done a no strings attached microgrant, trying to be somewhat disruptive in this philanthropic space, and now have done over $500,000 in no strings attached grants. I think much of it comes from the sort of the work I've done with the Black church. I always say the model really is not a philanthropic model, but really is a Black church model of how we've always mobilized resources and put resources back into the community.
I like how you talk about how the Black church has always mobilized resources for the Black community, and that you're continuing to do that work. That's how I really met you, kind of like met you and didn't meet you. I think we started connecting in the spirit with the Freddie Gray thing and the work that you were doing around that. And I was part of some of those communities that came together. And so thank you for the work that you're doing and who you are in the world, because you definitely are a game changer. And I like the fact that you focus on Black community. Black-led community, Black community, and that you are a game changer within that community. And you're always connecting the dots and connecting people together. Even right before this, you were talking about a project. And so you're always trying to collect and get Black minds together. And I appreciate that work that you're doing in that. And for you, Will, same thing. You know, who are you, and how do people see you? How do you see yourself? And how did you get here at this point?
You know, it's really interesting. I would probably characterize myself as an ordinary guy with a pretty extraordinary task. I think that's how I would explain myself. And what I mean by ordinary is that I have fears, I have insecurities, I have flaws, you know, I have things that get on people's nerves, just like everybody else. But on the other side of that, I understand also that I have a great call and a great responsibility to my community or my sphere of influence. And so the way that I do that is sometimes put the regular guy to the side and step into the phone booth, you know, if I were to give a Clark Kent Superman kind of illusion. And then I come out and I do my work. And my work is being a teacher, being a motivator, being an empowerment coach, being a spiritual guide. And these are the things that I have been able to accomplish. And well, let me say it this way. I have been able to accomplish causing people to think and move. And I know that is my job, because none of us as a collective body of Black people or people in general, because, you know, the lives that I impact are not just people who are melanated, but as a body, as a culture, we will never, ever really move forward until we are clear about who we are and what we can do, and that we can rise above the stations in life where we are. And so, as I said, you know, if you catch me on an off day or the camera is not on, you know, I got on sweatpants and working just like everybody else. But when the time comes for me to do my work, you know, from the church, we would say that's when the anointing kicks in. And I find this grace to do this extraordinary stuff. And so, I'm grateful that I have come to this place where I can be both. I can be a regular guy and understand my responsibility. And I don't have to keep my head in the clouds. I don't have to wear a collar or a cross to do the work that I have been called to do. I can just do that as Will. And so I would say I'm Will today. So nice to meet you.
Yes. Nice to meet you too. Yes, I love being Victoria today. And so in the work that both of you do, and we know that you do ministry. Ministry is shaped and formed in many ways, as we all know, right? And ministry is not always from the pulpit, you know. And so, Will, can you tell the audience around, you know, because you were a pastor,
Mm-hmm.
And I know we'll get into that in the weeds and some of the other questions. You were a pastor, and then you left the pulpit. I would say temporarily, or you never left. You still was working the pulpit. It's just that the pulpit moved, right?
Yes.
It's
Yes.
like almost like that book, Who Moved My Pulpit? And so it's like, so some people say we left the pulpit. No, the pulpit moved
Mm-hmm.
and it shifted. And so
Mm-hmm.
can you talk about how you evolve? And let me put a little caveat in there. I learned in a leadership conference that Dr. Renita Weems said that some of us are too busy answering a call when we should be putting an S there, answering calls.
Yes,
And
absolutely.
when I look at the two of you, and I had Kendall Brown on last week, who also talked about how he, evolved, just constantly evolving. And so this is about evolving, evolutionizing my greatness. How did your greatness look when it wasn't so great? Like when you left the pulpit, or when the pulpit moved and shifted,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And in order to become a game changer, you have to be willing to change
Mm-hmm.
the game.
Mm-hmm.
So how did that feel for you when the pulpit moved and you had to do whatever you had to do in that season? What did that feel and look like? How did you shake, and how did you move, and how did you evolve from it?
Okay. Well, of course, there's a lot that goes into that.
Absolutely.
You don't pastor for 15 years and all of a sudden do something else. It doesn't work.
Yes.
And so I had known for several years that a transition was coming. Like I knew that. Now, the other thing, however, is that when you are a pastor, that is a huge part of your identity. It's a huge part of your day-to-day life. It is a part of your mental and emotional health, because again, you get so much out of operating in that calling. And so to transition out of that into the next thing I knew I was supposed to do, I was clear about what I was doing, but I did not understand the toll that it would take on me. I was depressed when I left. The church didn't kick me out. I left. You understand what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
I didn't understand how it would affect me. But I processed it. I went to therapy. I did all the things that I needed to do, again, to be reassured in this next place in my life. But the transition was difficult. And I guess as we are really talking about this, really for the purpose of encouraging the viewers, understand that transition from where you are to where you are destined to be sometimes is going to be hard. And too many times people don't make that transition because they're afraid of the hard spot.
Right.
But the hard spot doesn't last forever. You got to push through it. You got to be prepared. You got to have a good support system. And you got to be clear about where you're going, because that's the thing that keeps you from getting lost in that transition. But it was difficult. But necessary. And I'm grateful that you led into this and put an S on the word call, because we're not necessarily just called to one thing.
Yes.
When I got clarity that just saying my destiny, that pigeonholes us and puts us in a place where God can't use us to our fullest.
Yes.
Even in the natural, when you are going to a certain location, that's not the only location you will ever go to. You get in your car and you can drive somewhere else that you can enjoy. Life is the same way. We have different destinies, and many times you got to get to one destiny to get to the next destiny, maybe to get to the next destiny. And because I know that now, I'm free to move and be whoever it is I'm called to be at that time. And so I'm glad you set it up that way, and I hope the people heard that.
Yes, I definitely heard it, and I'm quite sure our viewers heard it. And so again, we are having this conversation about with two influential, strong, powerful game changers in their own right and the work that they do. And so I want to go now to Jamye and kind of like get that same question. But before we do that, I like, Will, how you talked about, I think people need to see that change is an opportunity and not a threat. And if we stop seeing change as a threat and more of an opportunity, but in that opportunity, I think Eckhart Tolle talks about in his book, You know, we like to see things, our mindset can only focus on the negative, but we need to understand that everything is always happening at the same time. There's this duality going on, right? When we deal with this whole notion of leadership and change and transition and transfiguration in the leadership. And so, you know, better and worse happen at the same time. Good and bad happen at the same time, you know, but we focus on what we can't control rather than focusing on what we can control in the shift. And so thank you for kind of like highlighting that. Jamie, can you, for the work that you do, you work with a lot of pastors, you work with a lot of politicians, activists, you know, you do a lot of this whole social change work, kind of like frame for us your whole flow around transition. You know, you got like 3 or 4 different organizations, and how do you flow in and out of that with the shift and the difficulties of that?
Yeah, definitely. I would say like I didn't have a pulpit that was moved, but probably somewhat snatched early on. I was I was director at Collective Banking Group, which was my dream job. It was, you know, faith, economic development, working with business, private sector, and nonprofits as well. And I was fired from the Collective Banking Group on the sanctuary floor. And at that time, like I had my first daughter was being born, and that was just a moment. I left there and began doing some consulting work for the Maryland Democratic Party, but that was temporary. And I found myself being a waiter at a restaurant I used to take clients to for a moment because I now like my daughter was born, I had bills to pay, and that shift. But the important part of that temporary moment of God, I believe, preparing me for the work of Kinetics. So Kinetics was launched there. I began to just build deeper relationships in community and across the U.S. Had the opportunity at that time. Harvard used to have the summer leadership program for faith-based economic development. And that began to connect me more on a national level with relationships. And so for me, strategically, I think I've always been putting myself in the faith community as well as the activist community movement spaces that, you know, when opportunity wasn't as strong here, I knew I could sort of pivot and shift to multiple spaces. So I'll just try to work in numerous sectors at the same time to always see what opportunities may be emerging at that particular moment.
Okay, thank you for that. Thank you for that. And thank you for both of you sharing how you shift, you know, and you know, in and out of season, right? And when you're called to be a game changer, you have to know how to shift in and out of season because you don't stop game changing, right? And I need the viewers to hear that, the leaders to hear that you don't stop shifting. And I'm glad that you all are talking about openly about this whole transition and shift. So that leads me into the next question. What makes you tick as Black leading men? Whoever wants to go first. What makes you tick? Wow. I mean, what gets your goat going? What makes you tick? What inspires you?
Mm-hmm. I'll say for me, there are probably several things that move me, but I think probably the primary motivator for me is this paternal, maybe pastoral kind of thing I feel to help people. Because the thing is this, I'm kind of an empath, and so I feel what people are going through, and something in me wants to respond to that. If a baby cries, I want to address it. If there is an animal stuck in the fence, I want to deal with that. If there's a person in a bad situation, I find myself. One of my friends call me, I'm like a first responder, I guess, by nature. And so when I see hurt in humanity, I want to be able to do something about it. I know I can't address it all, you know, but I can do something. And that keeps me thinking. It keeps me planning. It keeps me trying to grow and be better so that I'm better equipped to address needs when I see them. And I think as a builder or planter or protector by nature, it's almost like I can't help myself. But I think as long as there are people in the world who need something, as long as there are people in the world who are hurting in some sort of way, I'm always going to have fuel to go. And so I think that's my primary motivator.
Okay, good. That's a good motivator. And what about you, Jamie? What
Yeah,
makes you tick?
definitely would build off of that as well. Really helping folks. My mom was evangelist here in Baltimore in the Church of God in Christ, and just always serve. When people ask me even about my own theological framework around my work, I say it's the theology of mom. It really is her lived experience and how she showed up in the world that I really sort of model. And it's just connecting people, really connecting the dots. I think even the experience I had with collective banking group and looking at these sort of hierarchical structures, I thought that we didn't necessarily get the best and most out of our congregations, that we had all the brilliant talent within our communities. And so for me, it's really been a lifelong work of trying to connect the dots and bring people together and make sure we're getting the most out of our community. So for me, connection is important, making sure the best and our brightest are coming together to really do the work in a holistic way.
I love that. I love that. I love how both of you are framing right now and kind of pivoting this whole notion of how community and connectivity is important. That's what I hear. Community and
Mhm.
connectivity are important. And the work that you are doing, in this thing called human life, connecting those dots and connecting those people in that dot, I just think is phenomenal. Jamie, you lead me almost into the next question. You're leading us into the next question about what and who inspired you. I think you said your mother, your grandmother, and talk about that as Black men. Who inspires you right now, or who have inspired you? What has inspired you to do the work that you do right now in building community and connecting people? Jamie, we'll start with you.
Yeah, so definitely my mom and the way she's always showed up in community. She's been feeding the community in Baltimore for the last 35 years. We just went out, I think, the Saturday before last, and now my children are coming along with us as well. And so I'm seeing that impact, generational impact that she's having in their lives. But my dad as well. My dad came to Baltimore, dropped out of school at 8th grade because he was the oldest and had to go to work. Went on to open 5 dry cleaners and several nightclubs in the city. Then my sister, who had me by 10 years, she passed away a few years ago, and she went on to open 2 pizza delivery stores in Baltimore. So that entrepreneurial bug was something that was definitely in my family. But lost both of them. Lost my dad at 56 and my sister at 53. So particularly now around mobilizing resources and entrepreneurship, I'm thinking about this cultural health, how, as we are being resilient and doing this great work in community, also how we making sure folks have access to capital so they can have the ability to breathe as they do this work as well. And I say, John, in a ministry standpoint, it was Reverend Jonathan Weaver who was the founder of the Collective Banking Group, AME pastor in Mount Nebo Church in Prince George's County. To see the work that he was able to do, over $300 million in loans, connecting to Black churches in Prince George's County in D.C. The way he led, folks used to ask me all the time, how in the world did y'all get 200 churches and pastors together? And it was a testament really to who he was and how he was able to bring people together.
I think that is phenomenal. I love hearing this story of yours. I mean, I thought I knew you, but I don't know you, right? I'm just learning you so much. And I do hear the entrepreneurial bug in your family. And I love how you framed that your father had to leave 8th grade or 8 year. I mean, no, 8th grade, right? Yeah. And so when he stopped at 8th grade, he went and opened up 5 laundromats,
Yeah, dry cleaners and a
dry
couple
cleaners,
nightclubs. Yeah.
and a couple of nightclubs. Do
Mhm.
y'all hear that? And so this whole entrepreneurial bug is, and I love how because of your entrepreneurial spirit, you want to make sure that others have access. I heard that. You
I
want to
love
make sure others have access. And that is very, very important when we are doing the work that we do, whether in ministry or outside of ministry. It is all ministerial work. And so thank you for doing that and continuing to evolve into that form of trajectory in entrepreneurship. And I appreciate that about you. Thank you so much. Will, what about you? Who inspires you, and talk to us about that.
Interestingly, I absolutely have to piggyback off of Jamie because his experience and mine are very similar. And actually, before I make that connection, I want to laud him for how what I call, he holds the door open.
Mm.
And when we get access to a certain place,
yes,
and we have a certain knowledge base or relationships, it's important that we don't go in that door and shut it behind us, that we hold that door open for others to come behind. And so I applaud you, my brother, for doing that. That's how we get to where it is that we need to be. Now, in terms of answering the question, my influences, I am heavily influenced as a spiritual practitioner by my mother and my grandmother and my great-grandmother. They have really poured in me generations of faith and spiritual clarity, boldness, being teachers and worshipers, teaching me to be a man of faith, a man of integrity, one who can stand on what he believes in, even if it's unpopular or if it is difficult. I have watched my mother raise children. I have watched my grandmother be a source for not only family, but for community. I've just seen that my whole life. And so when I run into difficult times, I look back and I look at how my mother traversed those things. And I'm like, this is what I come from. And so it puts something down on the inside of me, again, that causes me to be able to stand in what I believe I've been called to be. So from a place of character and spiritual strength, I get a lot from the women in my family. In terms of being a spiritual guide or spiritual leader today, probably my most, I would say the heaviest influence right now is Bishop Carlton Pearson. And not only from the personal relationship that he and I have, but watching his life and how he sacrificed so much and walked with grace to say what it is he believed and to not back down from that. And being a same gender loving Pentecostal preacher like I am, I've endured a lot. I've lost a lot. I have been ridiculed. I've had people to walk away from me. I've had all kinds of sacrifices that I've had to make. But looking at his life and looking at how he has managed to be who he is in all places at all times gives me so much encouragement to be the man that I am called to be. And so the women in my family, and then Bishop Carlton Pearson.
I love that. I love that. And I give praise to Bishop Carlton Pearson. I love him. I love his work that he's doing, but I give more honor to the fact that you guys are lifting up the women in your family. Two Black strong men lifting up the women in their family. And it happens to be Women's Month. And I give honor to all the women out there. But I really appreciate that. I love it when men can lift up the women without feeling emasculated. I just want to put that out there. I'm just saying. And so,
well, men, I'll say this is men who are secure in their masculinity have no problem lifting up women.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But you hear on certain platforms, you know, I don't even want to go there. I'm going to stay focused. I'm having a moment. Let me stay focused. I'm having a moment. So what advice would you, the two of you give, have for leaders who might be stuck, right? You've been stuck, I'm sure, looking for something different to do, pivoting into something new and different and fresh, if you will, or organic. What advice would you have for leaders? Either one.
You want to go first?
Sure. I mean, one, I always say, particularly some of my work has always been an intersection of like movement and community building, is stay close to the ground. I think sometimes you can be close to the ground and the people when you start, and then you can chase the next shiny new thing. So I think it's staying in close proximity to those you claim to serve. And then it's just retooling, like never stop learning, make sure that you are finding out what's next, what's happening. We see a lot, we see like even with churches in COVID, right? And fast forward, a lot of churches in ministry, as far as we need to get our technology right, we need to get online, something you probably should have did years before COVID. So I think it's just paying attention to what the trends are that we are on purpose, and again retooling so that we have the skills as things begin to shift.
I like that. And you speaking to what this show is about trending forward. And how do we trend forward? By, evolutionizing our greatness. How are we doing that? You will?
Can you all hear me? I think for some reason I lost my audio.
Yeah, we can hear you.
You can hear me? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. I can't hear you, but I'm sure it'll come back in a moment. What I would say is in terms of answering that, how do we transition to the next thing? I think it's really very important to not only listen or to pay attention to what's going on in the community, but to also listen and pay attention to what's going on inside of you. Too many times we forsake other gifts that we have, other passions that we have, because again, we think we have only this one destiny or this one calling. And what I've come to understand is because we are made in the likeness and image of God, we are multifaceted. We present in many different ways. And I think the way that we really honor God and the way that we fulfill purposes is, again, to know that there's more than one thing we can do. And so for me, I know that I can preach, not that I'm the, but I know that that's one thing I can do. I can sing, I can write, I can teach, I can do a lot of different things. And I think that for me, it was important for me to explore some of those other areas to be a blessing to the people that I'm called to in a different kind of way. And so I would encourage people, figure out what it is that you can do, figure out what you're passionate about doing, and then make a plan to pursue that other part of yourself, and make no apologies about it. Do it responsibly, but you don't have to do one thing your whole life.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I love your responses, particularly around this whole notion of staying close to the ground, staying firm close to the ground and making sure that you serve that particular place well. I like how, Wilhorn, you talked about, trending forward, and the ways in which you can trend forward is not to forsake. He must be having some audio problems. He'll be right back in, but not forsake that which we've been called to, right? And so we want to let the audience know you just don't have one call. Some of us need to be responding to several calls, right? And I made that mistake in life. And when I'm mentoring someone, I teach them and I talk to them about it. You don't have to give up who you are to answer a call, right? You're answering a particular part of who you're going to be in life, but it's not the one thing that you're called to. And so I appreciate that, not just sticking to answering a call. I gave up everything to answer the call because I thought that's what I was supposed to do out of ignorance. And no, everything, and Elder Dorothy Harris taught me everything that I am, God uses that for everything I will be, right? And so we don't have to give up a part of who we are. I mean, it's like cutting a part of who God gave us to be or called us to be, and we cut that part of the call off to answer another call, and the puzzle is jacked up, it's jigsawed because we jigsawed it. And so thank you so much. Will, can you hear us now?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Okay, good. Thank you so much. I appreciate those responses, and that's really, really good. Let me ask you this question. If there is anything you could have done differently up to this point as a leader, what would it have been?
Oh.
I know it's a bunch of it, but you can focus on one or two. That's really heavily weighing on you right now, because I know it just came to your forefront of your mind. Help the people. We're trying to help leaders understand that, it's okay not to know it all. It's okay not to have it all. It's okay to fail. It's okay. These things, it's okay. But we have to be okay with it being okay, if that makes sense. So Whoever wants to go first.
Well, if I were to do something different, and again, I was a pastor for 15 years, and coming up in the time that we did, I'm on the other side of 50, so coming up in the time that we did, if you were a pastor, then you were just a pastor, you understand? And that was a pretty well-defined, pretty small box. And it is hard sometimes to explore the other parts of you. And I struggled with that, I guess, for many years. If I were to do something different, knowing what I know now, I would have been a pastor and some other things. I would have been able to really live as Will while I led a church, while I did some of the other things that I did in the community, without living in this very, very small box, this very small way of existence, because life is big, life is grand, and too many times we don't allow life to be that because of external expectations. And so if I were to go back and talk to that young preacher, I would tell him to be okay with just being all of who you are, and allowing God to really use all of that. So that's what I would do different.
That's good. You'll go back to that young person, right?
Yeah,
all
back
right.
when my abs were.
That's another question. What would that young person tell that old person? But we'll answer that later. Okay. You, Jamie?
I would say build a team. I would have built a team earlier. I think you look at some of the data. I think 95% of Black businesses are solopreneurs, and when you hire 2 to 3 folks, your revenue is known to triple about 3 times. So I think sometimes you can just be running that type shit. You feel like you need to run a tight shit because of whatever revenue you may be bringing in, but not realizing that it's through building a team and a strong team that you have the ability to increase and expand your work. And so I wish I had done it a lot sooner than now, but I'm seeing the benefits of building out a team. So I would definitely say don't go at this alone. Find folks who want to build with you and build that team together.
Thank you. Oh, I love these responses. That's so awesome. I love this whole team concept. I think the acronym that I used to use a lot when I was pastoring in Baltimore was the acronym was Together Everyone Achieves More, right? And that was the whole acronym for team. Mm-hmm. And I am one who really hates solos. But I had to learn how to stop being, a pastor. Like if things wasn't right, I go try to fix it, right? That's still a form of trying to be in this whole solo. So thank you for talking about this whole notion leaders that we need to be in collaboration and not be fear that somebody's going to steal something from you, because you're not the only person that God gave it to be honest with you. And then work in teams and collaborate. And then I really, really like, Will, how my younger self would probably have done things just a little differently in this state or over here. And so I appreciate that, those 2 comments from you guys. The work that you do comes with a cost. Yes, leadership comes with a cost. So the work that you do comes with a cost. Share with us, how have you navigated disappointment in yourself and disappointment in others? Woo-hoo! That's a good one.
I'll go first.
I'll fight for who's going to go first.
Yeah, I don't know if I've dealt with it the best all the time, but one of my dad again was an entrepreneur. So one of my prayers early on was sort of to have work family life balance, and I haven't always done that well. And even though I've worked from home for quite a amount of time, I realized as time went on that being physically present didn't necessarily mean that you were emotionally present. And so for me, it's been trying to carve out that time, those boundaries, to make sure that I'm spending the time with the children. Because at first, again, I would say, I'm here all the time. But I wasn't necessarily present. I was at part of a fellowship, and the brother Reverend Wilhorn, who does Courageous Conversations, came through. And one of the processes that he used to do was he would just look at folk. And I had pulled him up the night before on YouTube. I'm like, who's our speaker tomorrow? And I'm watching him like go through the room and look at everybody. And I'm like, this feels real corny. And then the next day he gets there at Princeton and he's looking at everybody. By the time he hit the 15th person in their eyes, it just did something to me. Like the way in which he was taking time to see everybody in the room. And then of course he went on that day and just really shifted so much in me about what it means to be present. Sometimes as an entrepreneur, I can be on the 3rd, the 4th, the 5th thing I'm thinking about doing and not really enjoying that moment, not really embracing that moment. So to be present is something that I'm learning to do better at, and making sure that I'm having that right balance between family and work.
I like that. I like how you are really pivoting this whole notion around you might be present, but that doesn't mean that you're emotionally there. And so thank you for talking about that and your experience in that. You will?
Well, when it comes to disappointment, I have come to understand that that's inevitable. You know, we are imperfect people. And so sometimes people won't live up to our expectations. Sometimes we won't live up to our own expectations. But the way that I have learned, and I'll say learned because I haven't always understood it this way, I have learned to give people space to be imperfect. And understand that many times, probably even most times, when there is a disappointment, that people didn't do that on purpose. They didn't do it to purposely hurt your feelings or let you down. And so I give people grace for that. When I have maybe not done something to my best or disappointed myself, I've had to extend grace to myself and say, well, maybe I was learning, or maybe there was something else going on inside of my head or my heart that was causing me not to perform at my best. And look at it, learn from it, and then just do better the next time. You know, spending a lot of time doing postmortems or holding grudges or whatever it is that keeps us stuck. Man, that's not fair. It's not fair to us personally. It's not fair to the people that we serve. And so we have to find ways, again, to extend grace, release that stuff so that we can go on and do the business that's at hand. And so as long as there are imperfect people in the world, there are going to be disappointments. And I process everything through that filter, and that keeps me on track.
Thank you. You named it, even though both of you were talking about you referenced it, Jamie, as well. So I'm kind of like want to just go out there on a limb, and I'm trying to dig a little more out of you. You know, particularly since you are Black men, game changers in the world, locally and nationally, and you're making your own stake in the world, and you are inspiring many. Talk to me a little more around when we talk about this whole notion of extending grace. You can't extend grace to others until you've learned to extend grace to yourself. And Will, you just mentioned that. Mm-hmm. But I want to dig a little more. What does it mean to extend grace to yourself without trying to holify it?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? What does it mean to really, really be okay with self and extend grace to self in those? Because it's going to lead us into the next question.
For me, Victoria, you know, again, like I said, I've been around the block a couple of times, and I've made my share of mistakes, but I had to really sit with that and get in touch with my humanity. Mm-hmm. You know, sometimes, you know, men, period, you know, we can be sometimes egotistical, arrogant, even sometimes aloof or disjointed, because we're so connected to our roles in leadership that we can't expose any cracks in our armor, no chinks in the chain at all. Nobody can see any of that stuff. And what I have come to understand as a leader is that sometimes you got to be like Jesus and tell Thomas, come put your finger in my wound. You know, I'm wounded. I'm not perfect. And I need you to be able to connect with that. And so in my experience, and as I have learned to be okay with my imperfections and my humanity, I've learned to articulate that. I've learned to share that with other people. And so I don't make any excuses for myself. I don't do, you know, extending grace is not saying that the behavior was okay. Extending grace says that you really should not have handled it that way, but you got to forgive yourself and get over it. That's really what I mean by that. And again, we can be hyper masculine. Some people call it toxic masculinity, where we don't give ourselves an opportunity to be imperfect. But if I would share anything with my Black brothers who are leaders, the people that follow you will appreciate you showing that you are human. They will respect you more. They will cover you. They will work harder for you when they know that you're human, These are the experiences that I've had. When people think that you got it all, when you don't need any help,
right,
then they don't help you because they feel like you don't need that. And so, again, extending that grace to myself, allowing myself to be human and allowing people to see that has actually really helped me in my leadership roles.
that's good. Thank you so much. Come and touch my wound. Come and see that I hurt as well, right? Come and see that I got holes in my stuff, right? So yes, thank you for that. Jamie, what about you?
I think Will said it. I think
He
for
said it
me,
all.
yeah, he said
Okay.
it. And like for me, it's really and learn for me. It's still learning, and it's just around feeling that you so much work to be done that you got to keep going, keep pushing. And I think maybe sometimes I don't give myself the grace I should, but definitely trying to learn how to give that sort of grace that we do fail, that we do make mistakes, that you got to get back up and keep pushing. So I just try to keep pushing, but I think sometimes I'm a little harder on myself than I need to be.
Yes, I think most of us are as leaders. We are, but you're speaking from a Black male perspective, and I appreciate you both sharing that. So we're running out of time, but I'm going to push these questions in so we can just try to get these in. How have you evolved around failure and pain? And what has been your greatest struggle with God in this journey as you are trending forward? Now I'm going to read it again. How have you evolved around failure and pain? What has been your greatest struggle with God? People think that they can't be mad at God or angry with God or disappointed with God. Or what has been your greatest struggle with God in this journey as you are trending forward? And we can give those responses, quick responses, because I got one more question for you or a couple more, and as we wrap up.
I'll go real quick. I think for me early on, it really was. I played college ball. That was coming towards an end, and I got sick. I got sick with Crohn's disease, and for the next 7 years, I was sort of on my back, in and out of work. So it really was that sort of struggle of just like, man, I felt like I had so much to do. I was in my 20s at that time, and I just felt like I was in timeout. And so that was really a battle with God. Like, how can I'm carrying all this of what I believe I'm supposed to do, and I'm in timeout right now. And for those 7 years of battling Crohn's disease, and Lord, thank you, I haven't had an issue with Crohn's in about 20 years. But those 7 years really was a time of reading everything I could and really spending time. And so like now, the stamina, the ability to be resilient really was built in those 7 years. And so it's not too much that sort of gets me off my game in this moment, but it was those 7 years of kind of what I thought was time out, which was really preparation.
What I thought was time out. Y'all need to get that. That I know some of y'all preachers already. Will already got a sermon. What I thought was time out, right? Yes, rest was really preparation. And how about this? Time out with God. Whoo! Lord have mercy. Will, come on and go through it because I'm getting excited. I'm getting
It's really interesting, man. I mean, Jamie, you put that together well, man.
Yes.
Because see, sometimes it takes pain, it takes disappointment, it takes failure to be able to change your paradigm. You know what I'm saying? You got to go through some things to be able to look at things differently, to see God differently. Because too many of us have been presented this idea of God as, God the giver, God the waymaker, God, does all the good things for you. But then when things don't go the way that you want them to, then you find yourself disappointed with God when we shouldn't have been putting that stuff on God anyway. Life is life.
That's right.
And when we get to a place where we understand that even in those times when we're in timeout or we have failed or experienced pain, God is still with us. And so I have learned to look at things different. Each of us have had people to pass away or lost a job or, failed in certain areas. But I don't put that on God the way that some people do. I just understand it as a part of life and understand that the grace of God is with me while I endure those things.
This is so good. This is so good. Thank you so much for responding to that and being very transparent in your responses. What is your superpower? Real quick, what is your superpower? Jamie, what's your superpower?
I'd say relationships and connecting people.
Relationships and connecting people.
Mhm.
Again, this whole conversation has been about connectivity and relationships, right? Will?
My superpower is adaptability.
Mm,
And
yeah.
really what I mean by that is life shifts, things happen, and my ability to be able to move with it, I think, has been a sustainer for me. And so beyond all the gifts and talents and experiences and all of that kind of stuff I have, there are a lot of people who are more gifted and talented that I am, but they weren't able to adapt. And so instead of them using those gifts and talents and abilities to be relevant, they are now relics because they are not adaptable. So I see my adaptability as my superpower.
That's good.
Yes, yes. And that's one of my superpowers too, but also relationships. I'm building relationships. And I think a lot of times people want to say leadership is all about influence, nothing more and nothing less. I know who they get that from and where they get that from, but really leadership is more than just influence. It is adaptability. It is building relationships. So we all have the ability to influence people, but in your influencing, how are you adapting and how are you building relationships? So that's really, really good. And so our final question would be, what does it mean to you? What does success mean to you? And how have you manifested success? What does success mean to you? And how have you manifested success or trend forward?
For me, I would just say, for me, success is just living on purpose. Living the way in which God has called you to live. I wouldn't take the freedom that comes from me, the freedom that comes from entrepreneurship. I take that every day over over anything else. And so when you're living on purpose, that's what success is for me. And also the ability to sow into others and to see them to begin to grow and shine and blossom. So it's been a blessing to be able to sow and invest in people and then see them like walk out in their purpose as well.
That's good. I love the living on purpose. I like to, my mantra is living with purpose and leading with passion. And so, you nailed it. You nailed it with that. And so, Will, what about you?
I have come to define success differently. You saw me running in here. I was at work. I'm a realtor aside from being a minister.
Yes.
And when you work in sales and work in what I call some of the vanity industries, success is equated with how much money you have. But I don't see success that way, because I know of a lot of people who have a lot of money and don't feel successful. And so for me, success is really rooted in my ability to live authentically wherever I am and whatever it is that I'm doing. And I feel very proud of that I can be exactly who I have been created to be in every space. And that has taken a lot of work. And like I said, I feel very proud of the fact and feel successful that I can actually do that.
I appreciate that. We're going to be talking about that real estate offline. But thank you. Listen, Jamie and Will, you guys have been phenomenal tonight. I appreciate you being here on Leadership on the Go and talking to the brothers and the sisters alike about how we trend forward as leaders and how we continue to perpetually evolve, and we don't stop evolving, right? And we answer more than just a call, but we answer calls, right? And so in answering a call doesn't mean that you've gotten completely to your destination. Y'all need to hear that from these guys. Listen, you need to go back and rewatch this thing. This has been powerful, like really, really powerful. And so I thank you, Will. I thank you, Jamie. Do you have any last minute words that you would like to say to the leaders before we do our announcements and show who's coming on next? Jamie.
Well, I'll say just thank you again for this opportunity. It's been a blessing to be with you and Will as well. Please visit collectively.org. We give Black Fest this summer, 3 days of giving in Baltimore and throughout the DMV. So just check out Collectively, and thank you.
All right. Thank you. Check it out. Check his website out. Will?
Well, again, I guess I just have to continue to push authenticity, living as God has created you to, and really finding out what all of those gifts and skills are that you have and passions. And again, just encourage you go. I transitioned out of a traditional pastoral role. You know, I'm now teaching all over the country. I wrote this book. I think, you know, Victoria, the handbook, Victoria alluded to it. That's helping a lot of people and doing amazing ministry. And so you can order that on Amazon, or you can hit me up. You can follow me on IG. You can go to my YouTube channel, The Official Wilhorn, to learn more about what it is that I'm doing. But find those other areas, man, woman, and do those things. All right.
All right. Thank you so much. Stay here. Stay tuned. Stay here. Stay there. Do not change that channel. Our announcements, for my production engineers that are behind us. Let's put up our announcements. So on our next show, Evolutionizing My Greatness. Oh my God, we talking about it's, you know, every week we just have dynamic people. And so we have Dr. Irie Session and Mr. Stephen Lamont. Dr. Irie Session hails from Dallas, Texas, and Stephen Lamont from Fort Worth, Texas. So it's going to be a Texan thing. And we're going to be dealing with some trend making people 60 and up, Black excellence. They come with us and learn how these two dynamic and powerful leaders understood the importance of self amid life experiences. So you don't want to miss this. The 60 and up Black excellence coming and talking about life experiences, because they both have some dynamic stories and they've been through hell and back, I'm telling you. But they're going to come and share what it means to be powerful leaders today, 60 and up, right? And seasoned leaders, right? Not old leaders, but seasoned leaders come and tell us, right? Y'all get that right. And so I want to also welcome you to OG. It doesn't mean original gangster, even though I want to say that about the sister, but it's only greatness. She does live streaming, production, graphic designs, multimedia. She's the one who does my show. Amen. She does my show and I appreciate her. Her name is Crystal Glenn. And so I am so happy and so proud of her for doing this work in production for Essentials Unleashed. We also have backstage with her the Reverend Dr., almost Bishop, Elder Dorothy Paris Harris doing that work as well. So thank you both for doing this. I appreciate it. Thank you so much. Thank you, audience. Thank you, Facebook. Make sure you like, tag, and share this. Share it with a group. Share it with your friends, this whole video. Follow us at Essentials Unleashed, Facebook and Instagram at Essentials Unleashed. And we're also on YouTube and LinkedIn. And so I just appreciate you. And we're going to be doing some more work. So stay tuned for VLB coming up shortly. So thank you. God bless you. And may God keep you.